Are you feeling anxious, overwhelmed, afraid, lost, not up to the task of this historical moment? Do you feel like you're lacking? You're not enough? That might be because you're over-identified with your ego, with your small self. Call to mind a resilient person, someone who is facing adversity, difficulty, but seems calm in the midst of the storm, like they are right where they're supposed to be. They are fully engaged in the present moment. I wonder if you notice what I notice. I can call to mind several different people, some alive, some have passed on. I think about historical figures, and they all have one thing in common. Their lives are all in the service of something greater than themselves. They all seem to be channeling some deeper power. Their personal lives don't seem to matter as much as the greater purpose they serve. What that thing is different in each case. For some, it's a noble cause. For others, it's a deep connection to a loved one. For still others, it's their art, and others, a deep spiritual connection. Today, we're going to talk about connecting or reconnecting to that which is greater than yourself. Reconnecting to what I call the source of life, the source of vitality, creativity, and purpose. When you're connected to this source, this vitality, yes, you might experience some anxiety and feel a little worried sometimes, but that will be balanced out with this connection to this eternal, ever-present source of strength and vitality. It will bring equanimity and balance to your life. There are 4 different pathways to connection with the source. Last episode, we discussed the first pathway, connecting through community and collective action. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, A Time for Heroes, Building a Better World, check it out. We go over a 7-step approach to finding your purpose and how to join together with other people to help create a better world. In these next 3 episodes, we will cover 3 other ways to connect with the source. We will look at connecting through love and relationship. And we will look at connecting through nature and spirituality. Today, we will focus on fostering your creativity, connecting you to your unconscious mind, this embedded intelligence that is inside of you. And we will talk about the importance of bringing back a gift to the world through a poem, a song, a story, or a work of art. This is the realm of the soul. This is about taking advantage of and expressing your unique perspective in the world. Today, we'll tap into the you-ness that makes you you and discuss some traps along the way. This episode is for all the artists because artists are awesome. Or if you don't consider yourself an artist, it's for the artist within you. This is about answering the call to adventure, delving into the underworld, facing down demons, and escaping with the elixir of life. It's about resurrection, incarnation, the philosopher's stone, and the great work. Call your friends, call your neighbors, tell them to tune in. Today on Resilience in Dark Times, you are more than you know, accessing the power of your unconscious mind. You're listening to Resilience in Dark Times. I'm your companion and guide, Michael Glavin. Whatever brought you here, I'm glad you found us. This is a space for honest conversation, practical strategies, and the kind of hope that comes from facing reality together. Let's dive in. Before we begin, I want to say that there are times where I was connected to the source and times where I have not been connected to the source. How do I know? Well, right now, I feel like I'm connected to the source. What that means is I have ideas just sprouting out of me in a seeming unending fountain of creativity. Some of them are good. Some of them, I bet, are not so good. But when I'm connected to my internal source, this internal unconscious mind, when I take care of it, when I feed it, that's the gift that I get, is these ideas come to me. I can't control it, but I can control the conditions that make it possible. There are other times in my life where my mind was not fertile. And those were times like I was working 35 hours a week and going to school full time, seeing clients, finishing up studies, getting my hours to graduate. and we had a newborn child. And I was not getting enough sleep because I was helping take care of our new baby boy. And I was not getting sleep, and I was exhausted all the time, and it was a very difficult time. And I remember just stumbling around saying to my wife, "This is not sustainable. This is not sustainable." I'd say it multiple times a day. And she would say, "I know." This really nice, sweet tone. And I knew that like it was a projection forward, that at some point this needed to stop. So in this realm, the realm of the self, the psyche, that was being depleted. I was not getting sleep. I was not taking care of myself. I had no time for reading anything creative. There was no time for any sort of nourishment or recreation or any of that stuff. That was all gone. And so that blocked this sort of natural wellspring. But I was connected in a different realm. I was connected in the realm of love, relationship. And so that's what was sustaining me then. But today we're talking about the realm of the self, the realm of the unconscious mind. And so how did I get back in touch with that? Well, that's what today's episode is all about, is how to cultivate the conditions for creativity and how to produce something in the world, because that's what creativity is all about, is that not just having the ideas, which I love ideas and I could just stay in that idea state, but I think it's really important to take those ideas to people to give the world some benefit for your vision, your perspective, your experience. That's what it's all about. That's what gives meaning to life, is that connection. So if this feels like too much right now, first of all, I want you to think about it as doing less. It's not a doing more. It's not a to do. I need to get in touch with my unconscious mind. This is not a to doing. That's an ego sort of way of looking at this. It's an not doing. It's a allowing. It's a being, allowing yourself to be in the moment. It's allowing yourself to be in nature. It's allowing yourself to take in art or listen to music. I would recommend looking at it that way. It's a not doing rather than a doing. You can't really do creativity. Creativity comes to you or it doesn't. That's what the frustrating thing about creativity is. It's not on a schedule or a timeline, although you can structure things so that you know when it shows up, it's more likely to show up. So you need to be there if it does show up. But if you're working so much and you know, like I was in that period of my life, working a couple of jobs and trying to raise kids and have a relationship, and you're maxed out, that I get it. That's fine. You don't have to add anything. You don't have to take away anything, because what you're doing is vital and crucial and important. So keep doing that. Then I would just say, if you're listening to this, have it be aspirational. Something, okay, once you're through that period, sort of like me saying, this is not sustainable, knowing that I had an aspiration to at some point slow down, at some point read fiction again, or a magazine article or anything, right? So I get it. If you're taking care of kids or taking care of your parents or working multiple jobs, I get it. It's okay. You don't have to do this right now. It's fine. It's hopefully something you've done in the past and something that you can aspire to do later. So before we really dive in, we need to get sort of a model for what we're talking about. We need to talk about the self and what the self is and what it's not. So the first question is, what is that part of us that we call the I, in quotes? Who says I? What is it that's saying I? Is the I everything that we are, or is there something more than the I within us? Well, if you start with Freud, the I, the part that has volition, the part that makes decisions, that's what Freud called the ego. Actually, he called it in German the Ich. I might be butchering that, but in German that means I. So the I got translated into ego, but that's the part of us that says I. It's a part of us that late at night decides that I want ice cream. So I go to the freezer, get out the ice cream and get some chocolate chips and some fruit to pretend that's healthy, and then mix it all together and eat that ice cream. That's the I, that's the volitional part of us. I like to think of it as the manager part of us, the part that mediates life and life situations between what we want and what society expects, and tries to cope and find a strategy through that. It's really good at logistics. The ego is very important. And a lot of psychotherapy is to help rebuild or build up a healthy, functioning ego. That's a really important part of being a healthy person in the world, is to have a healthy ego. But is that all there is to us, to ourselves? Is there more than that? I think the quickest way to answer that question is to talk about Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was a German philosopher. Schopenhauer was Nietzsche's teacher. Freud learned from Nietzsche extensively, and he burnt his notebooks because he wanted to seem like he was more original than if he took a lot of ideas and just changed them from Nietzsche. So talk about ego. So Freud's ego got in the way of our knowledge in the world, because it would have been amazing if he did not burn his notebooks on Nietzsche. That was a huge loss for the world. Anyways, Schopenhauer talked about our experience when we're dreaming. So when we're dreaming, we're experiencing this dream. So I had a dream the other day, and I was in this old house, and I was being chased. And so I looked out the window, and I saw all these redcoats. The redcoats were going through the yards and knocking down doors. And I looked out the window, and I knew they were going to come into the house that I was in. It was not my house, but it was just a house. And the TV was on. And so I was going to go up the flights of stairs into the attic and hide in the attic. And I was like, oh, I need to turn off the TV so they don't think anyone's been in the house. I need to pick up my wallet so they don't get my ID. And then I'll go up the stairs and up to the attic and hide in the attic and hope they don't notice that I'm here. Okay, so psychoanalyzing that and our political situation aside, so there's the part of me, right, in the dream that's experiencing the dream. There's the part of me that's seeing the redcoats out the window, that's thinking I need to hide, that's thinking about going to the attic. So there's that part of us. And so in this model we're talking about, that would be the ego. That would be the small self. But what about that part of our mind that's creating all the redcoats, that's created the house, that created like everything else in the dream? That is also part of our mind, but that's not a part of our conscious mind. So that's part of our unconscious mind, but that's not all. This embedded mind, which Schopenhauer calls the will, also structures our lives and gives our lives meaning. He talks about how we live our lives, and all these random things happen, all these chance encounters. And then at the end of our lives, looking back, it all seems like part of this amazing story where these things had to happen, that they were somehow fated to happen. And so what is weaving all of this together? That's our unconscious mind. That's our embedded mind. That's our embedded intelligence. Like, that is amazing. That is what I want you to be in touch with and draw from that power. There are many studies confirming the power of the unconscious mind. In one study, they had people doing a mundane, repetitive task. In the study, dots were flashed on a screen, and the participants had to enter the direction of the dots on a keyboard. Talk about boring. After about 20 minutes of doing this task, a pattern was introduced. The color of the dots indicated the direction they were going. Most participants did not notice this pattern. The ones who did were eliminated from the study. Then they had the participants take a break. Half of them were able to take a nap, the other half were not. Then they came back and continued their task. Of the people who did not take a nap, 55% guessed the pattern on their return. Of those who napped and slept lightly, 63.6% of those people saw the pattern. And of the people who entered deep sleep, 85.7% of the people saw the pattern. Wow. So that's from 55% of people who did not nap to 85.7% of the people who did nap were able to see the pattern. Their unconscious minds were able to solve the pattern for them while they slept. I think this is really cool. Personally, I have experienced this many times as a computer programmer. When I was programming, I'd be hacking away at code for hours at a time, trying to quash this bug and not being able to do it. And then I would take a break. I would just go for a walk or go get some tea or something, and I'd forget about the problem. And then it would come to me, the solution. It was like, oh, it was usually something simple that I was just missing. I was just missing it when I was just trying to grind away and force it by willpower. When I took a break, my unconscious mind became alive and would often solve the problem for me. So how do we get in touch with that embedded mind, that large self? What is the relationship between our ego and that larger self, that larger mind? If the ego is the realm of light and identity, the unconscious is the realm of night, shadows, and the moon. It is filled with darkness and blended identity, contradiction, multiple meanings, paradox. It is the home of Dionysus, Hecate, myth, fable, the underworld. It is murky and it's saturated with meaning. Joseph Campbell, following on Jung, did investigations of myths and mythology. And he came up with an architecture that sort of fit most myths. And most myths follow a similar pattern. First, there's a call to adventure. The hero gets asked to do something, something happens, and the hero needs to intervene or something. There's some quest. Sometimes the hero refuses the quest, but then something more dire happens and they have to do the quest. So that's the first part, is the call to adventure, the call to action. And then there's the threshold. There's a leaving of the everyday life, going into the underworld, going into some strange new world, some place where things are different. There might be magic or mystical creatures or something. It's a different place. It's out of the ordinary. That is the realm of the unconscious. That's the descent into the unconscious realm, the realm of contradiction, the realm of magic. That's what our unconscious is. It's not logical. It has its own logic, its own mind, but it's not what we think of when we think of rationality. In that world, the hero then must face trials and tribulations, tests. They have to do great feats. They have to slay monsters. We're familiar with this. And at first, these all seem impossible. It's like, well, how is Hercules going to do all that? How is that person going to figure that out? That seems impossible. That seems like sudden death. But usually there's some supernatural aid, or there's a weapon or a tool that has been given by someone else that enables the hero to accomplish that task. We've seen this in the story of Perseus and Medusa. He goes off on this quest, goes into these caves, but he's given these supernatural aid, and then he uses those tools to do his seemingly impossible deed, to face the Gorgon could turn him into stone. That's the trial, right? But he's able to do that. And so then there's the accomplishment of the task or the deed with the help of others or with trickery or cunning. And then there's the boon. They get the reward. They get the thing that they need. And usually it's not just what they need, it's what someone else needs or society needs. They're usually doing it for someone else, doing it for a purpose, for society at some level. And then there's the return, the difficult journey home or the chase. Sometimes there's a temptation to stay and to not go back. Odysseus was tempted to stay in Lotus Land. I mean, why not? Like, just be blissed out on this island all the time? Sure, sounds great. But the hero must overcome these temptations to stay, or they need to survive the journey back. And then once they get back, once they return home, there's the sharing of the gift with the world. Sometimes the hero themselves cannot share in that gift. Sometimes the hero has been sacrificed, but that gift needs to be shared with the world. So this is the basic structure of most mythological stories, most folk tales. Some sort of journey into this magical realm, this alternate realm, which is interpreted as the unconscious. So the ego going into this unconscious realm, getting some help from the unconscious, from a different part of the unconscious, accomplishing some task, facing some tribulations, going through this ordeal, and then getting something of value and bringing it back to the world, to their culture, to their society. What these myths are trying to teach us, what they're trying to tell us, is that being connected to our unconscious minds, to our psyches, that's where the strength is. That's where the power is. It's a dangerous realm, so we need to be careful in that realm. But that's where power, vitality, strength, resilience resides. One way to be resilient is to be in connection with that vital energy inside of you. That vital energy is your nature side. It is nature coming up through you. I mean, the human realm, the ego is also nature, but this is a raw, powerful, undiluted form of nature. It's a force in nature. It's a vitality. Why do I use stories in all of these episodes? It's because the reality that we're dealing with in terms of global warming, in terms of our political situations, these challenges are overwhelming to our egos, our small self. Our small self cannot stand up to all of this. So what I'm trying to do is to employ stories. I'm using stories to help engage your unconscious mind. In the episode When Truth is Toxic, we talked about how sometimes truth can be so overwhelming that it can paralyze us like Medusa's gaze. For me, a story is like Athena's shield. So we have this horrible situation. Pick your situation. If you look at it directly, it's too much. It's too overwhelming. Your little ego, your small self doesn't stand a chance against it. But if you look into the shield of a story, a myth, a folktale, you can still see the problem we're up against, but it's framed within, it's filtered through this story, which activates your unconscious mind. And your unconscious mind is strong enough to deal with that. It is powerful enough. Your unconscious mind is like, yeah, but bring it on, right? I am a force that creates heroes. The ego just has to listen to me and do the things that are gonna help bring this about, bring this energy into the world. Unfortunately, the unconscious doesn't care so much about your ego and if your ego is destroyed or not in the process, which is why it's dangerous. But we'll talk about that more later. What I want you to get the sense of is being able to connect with this power and let it flow through you. That is what's important. That's what's needed right now. That can help you stand up to the challenges, especially if you're doing it in order to find something useful for your community. Some tool, some technique, some way of looking at things. So it's not just going in there and staying in there. It's not going in there to inflate the ego. It's going in for a specific purpose, to do a specific thing, to get something of value, and then come back with that gift to share with others. All right, story time. Gather around, make yourself comfortable. This is a West African folktale about Anansi, the trickster spider. This is Anansi, how spider obtained the sky god's stories. Long ago, there were no stories on earth. In those days, all stories belonged to the sky god, who kept them in a box beneath his throne. Because they had no stories to share, the people of Earth did not have much to do. They just sat around their campfires and whistled. Anansi the spider could see that people were restless and bored. He decided he would bring something that would help them pass the time. Anansi stretched his 8 legs and wove a wonderful web that reached all the way to the sky. He climbed up the web until he arrived at the throne of the sky god, Naomi, the keeper of all stories. Naomi Anansi said, "Great, wise God of the sky, I would like to take the stories to the people who live on earth. Will you let me have the great box where you keep the stories?" "I will give you the stories," said Naomi in a booming voice, "but the price is high. You will bring me 3 things. Onini, the great python who can swallow a goat. Osebo, the mighty leopard whose teeth are as sharp as spears. And Moboro, the hornet whose sting burns like the needle of a fire." "I will pay the price," said Anansi. Anansi made his way back down the web to earth. He went to speak to his wife, Aso. Together they came up with a plan to capture Onini, the great python who could swallow a goat. The next morning, Anansi walked into the forest, waving a big branch. As he walked, he spoke to himself. "She's wrong," he said, pretending to be very upset. "I know she is. He is much, much longer than this branch." As Anansi drew near the watering hole, a large snake rose up. It was Onini, the great python who could swallow a goat. "What are you muttering about, Anansi?" asked Onini. "You are disturbing my nap." "I have been quarreling with my wife," said Anansi. "She says that you are shorter than this branch, but I say you are longer. She will not listen to me, and I do not see how I can prove to her that I am right." "That is easy," said Onini. "Lay your branch on the ground, and I will lie next to it. Then you shall see that I am longer." The great snake slithered over and lay next to Anansi's branch. "It looks like you may be longer," said Anansi, "but I can't tell for sure because you are not quite straightened out. Could I straighten you out of it?" "Certainly," said Onini. "Let me fasten your tail at this end," said Anansi as he worked. "That way I can really straighten you out. And let me fasten you here by your head as well." Before the python realized what Anansi was up to, Anansi had spun a web around Onini and tied him to the branch. "Now you are caught," said Anansi. With that, Anansi carried Onini the python to Naomi. "That is 1 thing," said Naomi. 2 things remain." Anansi went back to earth and began to think about how he might catch Osebo, the mighty leopard with teeth as sharp as spears. Anansi dug a pit on the path Osebo used to get to the watering hole. He laid branches across the pit and covered the branches with sticks, leaves, and dirt. When Anansi was satisfied that the hole was well hidden, he scurried home and went to sleep. When Osebo came out to hunt during the night, he fell right into Anansi's trap. Anansi found him down in the pit the next morning. "Osebo," said Anansi, "what are you doing down in that pit?" "You fool," said Osebo. "Can't you see that I've fallen into a trap? You must help me get out." "I'll see what I can do," said Anansi. Anansi found a large willow tree and bent the top of the tree over the pit. He spun 2 silky cords and used them to hold the tree down. Then he spun another silky cord. He attached one end of this 3rd cord to the top of the tree and let the other end dangle down into the pit. "Tie this cord to your tail," said Anansi. "Then I will lift you up." Osebo tied the cord to his tail. Then Anansi cut the 2 cords that were holding down the tree. The tree sprang back to its original position, carrying Osebo with it. Osebo dangled from the tree. "Now you are caught," said Anansi. Anansi wove a web around Osebo, the leopard, and carried him to Naomi. The sky god was impressed. "That is 2 things," he said. "Only 1 thing remains." Anansi went back down to earth to catch Moboro, the hornet whose sting burned like a needle of fire. He cut a gourd from a vine and hollowed out the inside. Then he filled the gourd with water and went to the nest where Moboro, the hornet, made his home. Anansi poured some of the water in the gourd over his head. Then he dumped the rest of the water in the hornet's nest. Moboro, the hornet, came out, buzzing angrily. He saw Anansi standing nearby, holding a leaf over his head. "Oh my," said Anansi, "the rainy season seems to have come early this year, and it looks like you have no shelter from the rain. Would you like to take shelter in my gourd until the rain goes away?" "Thank you, Anansi," said Moboro, the hornet, as he flew into the gourd. "You're welcome," said Anansi, and he closed up the opening in the gourd with a leaf and wove a web to hold the leaf in place. "Now you are caught," said Anansi. Anansi carried Mamboro the hornet to Naomi. Naomi was very impressed. That is the last thing, he proclaimed. You have succeeded, Anansi, where many before you have failed. You have paid the price. Then Naomi called out in a voice like thunder, Listen to me. Anansi has paid the price for the stories of the sky god, and I do hereby give the stories to him. From this day forward, all of the stories belong to Anansi. Whenever someone tells one of these stories, he or she must acknowledge that it is Anansi's tale. Anansi took the box of stories back to Earth and shared them with all the people. The people were grateful for the stories and told them to their children and to their children's children, who told them to their children, and so on. Even to this day, the stories are known as spider stories. It's interesting to see how this story follows Joseph Campbell's structure of the monomyth. You have a central character who has a quest and goes across this threshold into this different realm, the realm of the gods, the sky god in this case. Then has a quest or a task, has to go through these trials and tribulations, get some help from his wife, accomplishes the task. There's a return journey, gets the boon, and then returns to Earth and shares the story with the people. I want you to think of the creative process this way, of shifting into a different place, getting in touch with that embedded intelligence, going through trials and tribulations, through efforts to get something of value that then you can share with others. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, it's a story that comes out of his time in the concentration camp. And when he was there, he talked about the importance of meaning. He talked about 3 different pathways to getting meaning. And one of them was to create a work, to produce something. And that's what helped him survive the concentration camps, was he wanted to write a book. He was in the process of writing this book. And so he needed to escape. He needed to survive. He needed to get through it in order to write this book. And the book was informed by his experiences in the camp. So that gave him purpose and gave him meaning. In these dark times, in these challenges, one way to help yourself be resilient is to give meaning to these challenges, meaning to these difficulties. And so if you're experiencing them, in order to produce some work, to produce music or art or a story, anything that can help other people, that can give meaning to your experience, to transform this suffering into something of value. That is so important to resilience, to being resilient. That transformation of horror, terrible things, awful things happening into something that has some value for us, for you, for other people, hopefully, for you and other people. Let's talk a little bit more about the process. One of the things I try to do, one of the things I recommend to you is feeding your soul. What is it that you're craving? What do you call out for? What lights you up? What interests you? What animates you? And the you, I'm talking about your vital energy, not the ego. The ego is probably going to be like, I don't want to go to the art museum. It's going to be crowded. It's going to be long lines. It's expensive. But there's another part of you that knows that when you go to a museum and you see amazing works of art, great art, or even bad art, that afterwards it activates something in you. It makes your mind come alive, gives you vital energy. You dream differently. You start thinking about things differently. That's feeding your soul. For me, it's art museums. As you can guess, going to see art is important. Music that catches me emotionally, but also challenges me intellectually. Games. I love board games. I love role-playing games. Role-playing unlocks my imagination. Creating role-playing scenarios or playing in them, reading fiction, reading philosophy, being in nature, being in cool architectural spaces. So many things feed my soul. And to what end? What am I hoping to pull from my depths? For me, this podcast, Resilience in Dark Times, is my work. It is my art. It's pulling on everything in me to try to help you, to try to help people. I'm drawing on everything I know. And so what that does is it transforms my whole experience, my whole life into a new purpose. It gives it new meaning to try to help other people. And so that's this pathway, this going into yourself, going into your unconscious to try to come through the other side, to get a gift to give to people. And so what's the role of the ego in that? Yeah, the role of the ego is to try to feed the unconscious, to read the books and to go to the experiences and to talk to the people and to take the risks. It's that little middle manager part of us that does the things that we know we need to do in order to feed the soul. And whatever that is for you, I want to encourage you to do that. So the ego, I think, has 4 jobs in this whole thing. One is to feed the soul, to do the things, to feed that creative part of you, that unconscious mind. The second thing is to do the grunt work, to put your embedded mind in the position to thrive. So you just show up at that typewriter or computer or whatever you have every morning, for instance, to show up in front of the microphone, to go to the studio, to put yourself in that position. And then the third thing, to get out of the way and let the ideas flow or not. If they don't flow, that's okay. And at the end, if things go well, just to send out the thank you notes, to clean up the mess, whatever it is. The ego is in service of the unconscious mind. If you're interested in a good book on this, I recommend, I'm not finished with it, but I'm reading it now, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, A Way of Being. I recommend it for this creative process and getting in touch with your unconscious mind. Each idea is only a page or 2 pages long, and so you can read it little by little, and it really helps shift your mindset and I think your practices in daily life. Do not use the book for medical advice. He has a really dubious thing. He makes a medical decision based on randomly opening a book and picking a sentence to read. So I would not recommend that. But in terms of creativity and your art, yes, this is the way to go. That's Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And there'll be a link in our show notes. And if you buy through that link, it supports independent bookstores rather than Amazon. And I get like $1 or $2 if you buy a book through that link. Either way, I would recommend checking it out. Let me talk to you about 2 dangers. One is the ego. The ego wants to glom onto, like a parasite, this powerful psychic energy and inflate itself. The ego is not responsible for this creativity, this power, this vitality. But a lot of times, if something is successful, like if you do something that's really awesome and great and you get this praise back, I've always been not so good with praise because I know this trap. I know my ego wants to inflate like a balloon and say, yes, I'm the greatest. Yes, this is genius. This is wonderful. I am the best. That's not true, and that's a trap. And you'll become a jerk if you do that. So don't do that. And you'll pop, right? That cannot be sustained. It's not real. So what I try to do, rather than pushing it away, because I've done that too, and that's not right either. So what I try to do now, I'm successful, is to join with the person who's praising or appreciating or something I've done, to join with them to appreciate that thing that flowed through me that they're acknowledging or witnessing. So it's not an ego thing. It's like, yeah, that was amazing, that what came out of me, because I can't choose to do it or not do it. I can just create the conditions and then hope that it flows through me. So be aware of that with creativity and a creative process and anything you produce. If it's awesome, that's awesome, but don't get a big head about it. In athletics, you'll see someone score a touchdown and then they'll point up. I think that's psychologically a really healthy thing to do. What they're saying is that it's not me that did this amazing physical feat. It's God. You're deflecting, you're pointing away from the ego. And that's a really good thing to do. On the other side, if something doesn't flow through you, it doesn't work, you want to do something great and you go blank or nothing happens. Shame is the other trap. But just like you're not responsible for the really wonderful, wonderful things, you're also not responsible if things don't turn out or you go blank or it's a disaster because you didn't choose whatever it is. If it was up to you, you'd choose something great. You'd choose a great work of art, but it's not up to you. So if you don't get the result that you want in terms of something kind of awesome, then the nest you created wasn't good enough or something was off. So what was it? What could you do better? What can you feed your imagination more? Can you get more rest? Was it the right time of day? Were you nervous? And if you're nervous, okay, then that's the surest way for your ego to get in the way is if you're nervous because you're thinking about that small self. You're thinking, what are people thinking of me? Is this good enough? That will kill creativity. That's not conducive. That's not a good nest. So then that's what you need to work on. And that's fine, right? Because then you create the conditions for creativity to flow through you. At this point, I hope I've convinced you, or at least piqued your interest in cultivating a better relationship to your unconscious mind. However, the pathway to get in touch with your unconscious mind will be particular to you. I can offer some suggestions on what has worked for me, but I want to invite you to start along this path or continue along this path if you've already started. Experiment, try different things, listen to your inner voice and see what works for you. Let me talk about different ways to get in touch with that unconscious mind. So one is journaling, just stream of conscious journaling every day for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that can really pull up out of you what's going on with you. The ancient Hermetic text says, as above, so below. If we take this metaphorically, this is true of our psyche. We often see in nature what lies hidden in our unconscious mind. If we open up ourselves to the natural world, if we immerse ourselves in nature, we can often see our soul reflected there. Our bodies are another pathway, tuning into our breathing, the sensations of our bodies, our feelings. We did this in the episode on transforming anxiety into action. So that's a good place to go back to if you haven't done that yet or to do that again. Another way to use our bodies to contact our unconscious mind is through dance and movement, letting our bodies move in ways that feel good or feel meaningful, and simply observing and feeling through what comes up. But another way to get in touch with that unconscious mind, that embedded intelligence, that embedded wisdom, is through divination. You don't have to believe in supernatural spirits and affecting things. I think the psychological benefit of divination is pretty powerful. What do I mean by divination? So I mean I Ching, doing the runes, tarot card readings, astrology, anything where you calm yourself, quiet your mind, ask a question that you're struggling with, that you don't know what to do, need some advice, need some insight, need some help with. And then you turn to something like tarot cards or the I Ching, and then you sort of randomly get some sort of result. If you notice those results, first of all, they're accumulated wisdom. Usually what they're saying is good stuff, but they're also contradictory. Because they're contradictory, that's a good thing. What happens then is we project onto them meaning. And so then we read in that meaning, and where's that projection coming from? It's coming from our unconscious mind. So we're projecting onto that sort of Rorschach ink blot. We're interpreting this contradictory stuff in a way that applies to our life. And so that projection, reading back in, That's our embedded mind. That's our deeper wisdom. So that's what is beyond our ego. So I'd really recommend it. In fact, that's your action item for today. For this week, I want you once a day to do some sort of divination. Doesn't matter what it is. You can do an I Ching. You can do the runes. You can do tarot. Whatever you have access to, you can change it up. Doesn't matter. Do it seriously and see what happens. I bet you're going to be surprised and pleased. And at the end, you're going to get this sense of being held by something greater than you. And that greater thing than you is your unconscious embedded mind, that intelligence, that will. We had a lot in this episode, so I want to summarize it quickly. How to connect to your unconscious mind. First of all, don't start from a deficit. Get some sleep, get nutrition, take care of the logistics and the basics in your life. And if you're too busy for this right now, that's okay. Then come back to it when things have slowed down a little bit, because you really need some time and space to do this. Next, feed your soul in the way that nourishes you. Figure out, what is that? Is it nature? Is it art? Is it music? Is it dance? Is it poetry? Is it philosophy? Is it fiction? Whatever it is it multiple things? Take those in. Take some time for them. Nourish your soul. Feed your soul. And the next step is to slow down, create the space, and ask the unconscious questions to try to draw something out of it. For this week, the way to do that is to do divination. That's your assignment. Your action item is to use divination. Pick one. And then tune in and listen for the response. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what arises. Okay, in the next episode, we're talking about love and relationships and one-on-one connection. Connection to your partner, connection to a child, connection to your pet, connection to a particular animal that you see every day or periodically. A groundhog, a gopher, are they the same thing? I don't know. A raccoon, a stray cat. That's another way to get outside the ego, to transcend the ego and connect with others through love. Until then. That's our show for this episode. If something resonated with you, please share it with someone you know. Subscribe to Resilience in Dark Times wherever you listen to your podcasts. And visit resiliencindarktimes.com to connect with our community. I'm Michael Glavin. Thanks for being here. Until next time.